Stop. Hey there. This is your host from Fatherhood Friday, here to tell you why AnchorFM.com is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Their creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right on your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Breaker, Bullhorn Radio Public, and much more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimal listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you're interested in making a podcast, stop by AnchorFM.com. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Hey there. This is your host from Fatherhood Friday, here to tell you why AnchorFM.com is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Next on Fatherhood Fridays, Season 4.
Yo, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Just excited this week. Man, I have been trying to get this brother on air.
Well, I can tell you for sure that there are no perfect parents.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, one of the biggest challenges, I think, for moms and dads in general is that parenting, you sense it. It's one of the most critical roles that you're going to play in life.
I think I shared my my feelings on that.
All right, so this is what I got so far.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you're now listening to Fatherhood Fridays, Season 4, with your host as always, Chalmer, on the one, not the two, giving it to you through my iPhone 8 Plus. How's it going out there? How are you living as the days progress in 2020? For many of us fathers, and even mothers, but probably more specifically fathers, for those of us that have to work from home and our kids are at home with us, we've had to experience how to adjust to homeschooling, how to be technologically savvy, how to be flexible in homeschooling, and how to learn in this new digital age, especially in COVID-19. And so today, we are going to talk to a very special, important person in my life. You've heard her in Season 2 from Family Fridays. You've heard her in Season 3 in Father and Daughters. And now she is going to be sharing her wisdom, her tips on how fathers can be more involved in online schooling or online learning. Presenting my wife again, Tanya Williams. How are you?
You know what? I will say, given everything going on in this world, I feel blessed. Very thankful to be here on this podcast with you.
All right. Anything else you want to say in addition to that? That was kind of brief.
That was brief?
Yeah, you're not really brief. You're more long-winded.
Okay. Well, that was it for how I'm doing.
All right. Well, I think she's trying to pretend as if, she's not long-winded, maybe just trying to give her professional side of herself, which is okay too, but nevertheless, I know this is your third time back on my podcast, but if there was somebody that was listening for the first time and they wanted to know more about you, tell them, who you are. And I know you just said your name, but what do you do for a living and what you're passionate about?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very blessed and fortunate to be doing something that I'm passionate about, that feels that is a part of my purpose and calling, and that's being an educator. So, you know, for those of you who don't know me, I've been in education for a while, and I recently, about what? You throwing up the hand, the 5? Okay.
Almost 5 years?
Almost 5 years. And I recently accepted a position as an assistant principal, so I'm really excited about it. But all that to say is I talk about, think about, read all things education all the time. I know, Chairman, sometimes you ask me to turn it off, and I'm like, I don't know how to turn a light bulb off because, you know, I think about curriculum, I think about access, I think about equity, I think about my kids. Like, you know, it's just sometimes when people ask me, how are your kids doing? I'm like, wait, are you talking about my kids at the school? Or are you talking about my biological kids? Because sometimes they feel one and the same to me. But yeah, so that's a little bit about like me and, you know, a major passion in my life is education.
Okay, so I think it would be fitting for you to talk about such a topic is how fathers can be more involved in online schooling. Even myself, you know, I can do a better job, so I'm going to be listening to you as well as other fathers out there. And so, as an educator in the school system, Tanya, what are some of the disparities, and disparities, I mean, inequalities and equity issues with homeschooling or e-learning that you find now that COVID has pretty much taken over?
Okay. So I definitely think that there are some equity issues and there are just some plain out challenges. So I'll start with the equity issues. One is definitely technology. I mean, we've seen it on the news. I know I've seen it on the news. I've been reading different reports about technology and essentially this concept of the digital divide. Who has access to devices and Wi-Fi and who does not? And before the virus, it was an issue, whereas we saw in the numbers that Black and Hispanic families and students did not have access as the same as, you know, white people, or even when you think about it from an income perspective, students from lower income families did not have the same access to technology or Wi-Fi as more affluent families. So that's definitely a challenge. And I was recently reading something from the Pew Center, which is a major like think tank, and they do all these nationwide reports. And just from a big picture perspective, they were saying that some 15% of U.S. households who have school-age children do not have access to internet. 35% of kids ages 6 to 17 who belong to a low-income family do not have high-speed internet connection at home. So it's a lot to think about, and essentially that's the big disparity happening right now. But what I want to say to that is that now, because COVID was so new, and like I said, these issues already existed, but I read online that COVID is kind of like a dye, and it just kind of made the issues more apparent because now you can really see them, like putting dye on a cake or something like that. Okay, so but I want to encourage parents to really connect with their teachers. Stay connected with your teachers. Stay connected with your school community, because now districts are coming up with better plans to make sure that every student gets a device. If you cannot afford one will be available, just to make sure that your children have connection and access to internet, and Zoom and Blackboard or whatever platform the school is using to put out those lessons and stuff, so, and communications.
Man, I think you've said a lot. How is it that there's a lack of digital technology when it seems like almost everybody has, or every kid has a cell phone, every kid has a tablet, or, you know, a laptop?
You know what? I'm glad you said that. And I think that, you know, for us, we're used to having technology. Most people that we know are used to having technology. But being an administrator, even a teacher, it's apparent that not everyone does. On the surface, it looks like everyone does. And so we have to address that issue, because you said something and it was so important. You said that COVID fast-tracked us into the future, right? And so now, because COVID and now e-learning has fast-tracked us into the future, we realize that there's a huge population that doesn't have access. And when you look even deeper, you see that it's undeniable that these statistics, when you look at them by race and by income, who they are affecting. And one day I was at the table with the kids and, just scrolling through my phone, and I read this article, I want to say it's by the New York Times, and it was basically projecting how far kids will be behind once school resumes by race and by income. And the numbers do not look good for Black and Hispanic kids, and just for kids who are from lower income communities. And so I think in knowing that, for me as their mom, that fueled me to go that extra mile, to try even harder, because I don't want, our kids or any kid, to be behind, particularly kids who may just naturally struggle in school, or kids who might not have access to what they need to be successful. Because that's true equity. We're not talking about equality where everybody get the same. We're talking about equity, getting what you need to level the playing field.
So it's not so much that kids or even teenagers don't have access to that they don't have access to technology or devices, but they don't have access to the necessary technology and devices to do online schooling. Would you agree?
I agree with
because
that.
You can have a cell phone, but that doesn't mean you on your cell phone you can access Google Classroom, or you can access these different programs necessary to do a Zoom call. You could do Facebook Live, but if your teacher is doing something else and you can't access it through your cracked cell phone or your cracked tablet, then it doesn't mean much, because most teachers are not going to accept homework through Facebook Messenger.
And I think too, some of the societal inequities, that are that's really impacting education, that's always impacted education, but it's more visible now, is food. You've been in education too, and you know that students struggle with food insecurities. There are families who do not have enough food. So just take in mind, you have COVID happening, and the millions of people who have lost their jobs, those are parents, right? So right now, students, just like it is during a normal school year, they might not be concerned about learning. They might be just trying to figure out, what is my next meal gonna be? You have those. You have daycares closing. You have challenges with getting quality challenges with getting access to quality healthcare. Again, things that existed pre-COVID, but it's definitely in your face right now. And so what I'm saying is that those things that are affecting the parents are also affecting the child. And so while we talk about like the device and the Wi-Fi, we're also talking about these other everyday life things that kind of come together like a puzzle. And if those pieces are not together, then you have lack of engagement, right? Because kids are not connecting to Zoom and to the content that we're trying to deliver, because they're trying to figure out just everyday life. And I think that that's very important to acknowledge when we talk about issues of equity, not just in the schoolhouse, right? But outside of the schoolhouse, everyday challenges that our families are facing.
So a lot of times when your basic needs are not met, then we can't even really go into do they have technological devices in order to be a part of a digital classroom, or turning in homework through a snapshot, because your basic needs haven't been met. And we could talk about that. That takes it to a whole nother conversation. But for the sake of the topic, getting more fathers involved with online learning, what are some things that we need to do as fathers practically to adjust to online learning from home?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good question, and I'm glad that you asked that. Some of the things I'm going to say might sound like super simple, but they are going to be the most important things. The couple of tips that I'm going to give up front are going to be ones about more of the what would you call it? Like social emotional side. One, remain positive and calm. Know that there is not a book for how to parent during COVID, how to help your child online during COVID. So there's going to be challenges. And just imagine if you are feeling a sense of anxiety or stress, how much more your child is feeling that. So really take the reins even through the times of the unknown to model positivity and calm, because this is what your child will repeat when they are going through challenges too, not just in COVID, but through life, because they're looking at what you do more than what you say. Realize that if you are a working father, you're working from home on Zoom, that Zoom looks different now. And what I mean by that is just that there's this YouTube video called BBC Dad, and it was a news reporter, and he was given, I think, a weather report, and the world didn't know that his wall was a backdrop. And then his daughter busts through the door, and you can see him, he was live, trying to man muscle the door back closed. And that was years ago. And fast forward to today, it looks the exact same. When I was having all the interviews for an assistant principal position, Cedric and Tammy came busting through the door, yelling through the Zoom about who took whose toy, and I'm sweating bullets because as I see them approaching, I'm telling them, I'm giving that hand signal while I'm talking on the interview, and at some point it became unavoidable, and the principal was just like, it's okay. And a whole load of stress just came rolling off my back. So what I'm saying is that, now that work is at home, school is at home, church is at home, it's just knowing that there's going to be a new normal when it comes to work. Remember to continue the positive affirmations, which were, always needed. I saw this stat online. It was a study done from Harvard just this year called the Caring Common Project. And the stat that I saw that was so powerful is that 70% of fathers in the U.S. feel closer to their children now than they did before the virus. And some of the comments that they were saying is that dads feel like they are connecting more, playing more games, doing all those things. So please know that relationship and that bond and the positive affirmations you provide for your children are so important. And answer what you can, because kids right now have a lot of questions. I don't know how much time you spent in the classroom, but most elementary school classrooms, middle school, high school classrooms have an agenda on the board. They have the objective, what they're learning for the day, and the agenda on the board. Kids know what they're doing next. They know their schedules. They know all these things. So we're walking into the unknown. So I will say that it's okay if your children be okay with answering questions that they may have, even if the answer is I don't know, because they're so used to having that structure and knowing what's next. So it's just so important to answer their questions. So
I think it's easy to have these conversations with fathers that might be technologically savvy and know how to navigate these different apps on the laptop or different apps on their phone or tablet to help their son or daughter, whether they're a child or a teenager. But what do you say to those fathers, or what tools or resources can fathers use if they are not technologically savvy for homeschooling or online schooling?
I'm glad that's a good question too. So, one of the things, so I've had like a lot of just friends and not who are not in education and family members ask me these questions too, and I've had some time to think about it. And the first place that I, want to point you to is to the standards. Every state has student learning standards, and for the majority of the states, I think it's 40 of the states fall under Common Core, but a state like Texas, where we live, don't. So we have our own standards called the TEKS, which stand for Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So the reason I tell you all of this is because you can literally look up on Google, straight up Google, third grade Common Core standards or third grade TEKS, and TEKS is spelled TEKS. Why I share that with you, because if you're not in education, you have no idea what your child, what is the goal for your child or children to learn, where they should be at by the end of the school year, what things are they working on, right? Because a lot of times if you're in a day-to-day and you're working and you're trying to put a roof over their head and food on the table, you're not, knowing like the sequence of how the teachers are rolling out things. And so you can easily access that information, so it can kind of give you a good start. I know I did that for Cedric and for Tamara, so that I can get a handle on, okay, so what are they learning in first grade? What are all the things to brush my self up on that too. Two websites that I really want to share are Teachers Pay Teachers and Pinterest. Now, I want to share those things because, first of all, always start with what the teachers are providing. They're providing curriculums and everything, but what I found last semester is I needed to supplement, and I heard that from a lot of parents, is that they felt like what was provided, they were thankful for it, but the curriculums and lessons were not enough. It didn't take long. Kids were done in a jiffy. So definitely start off with that as the base, but the supplemental materials can come from Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest. Teachers Pay Teachers have tons and tons of worksheets, which you can use. Now, I tell my husband all the time, I'm not a sit and get type of teacher. My kids are not sit and get type of kids. So we use the worksheets, but that's not all there is to learning. That's like that old, outdated, antiquated, sit down, do a worksheet, be still type thing. Pinterest really gives some great ideas on some hands-on lessons that you can do, or hands-on activities to support the lesson. I'm going to throw out some of the ones that I did, just to kind of give some mental visuals. Driveway sight words. Got this from Pinterest. Drew circles in the driveway and sight words in the circles, and I gave the kids water balloons. I called out the word, and then they threw the water balloon at the sight word. Sight word relay. I found those pool, what do you call those things? Those pool floaties that look like a long stick that you can get from a Dollar Tree or a dollar.
A pool stick?
Okay.
Pool floaty stick?
Okay. Or $1.50 at Walmart. Cut them up, put sight words on them, and then we went outside in the backyard and I used them like batons, and we did a sight word relay race. Or I took those same things and put them around the house and made a sight word scavenger hunt. And a lot of those things, those ideas were generated from Pinterest.
I hear what you're saying, and I think that might apply for kids, but I mean, what if you have teenagers? What if you have a father that their daughter's 16 and he's not technologically savvy, and this 16-year-old has some assignment due online? How is he gonna help her if he's not familiar with how to access some of these programs or how to even answer some of her questions she might have about some of these programs?
And I can see what you're saying, that definitely is a challenge. I would say the first thing is to stay in connection with the teacher, because teachers have a wealth of resources and knowledge and can walk you through how to do that, like how to help your child submit an assignment online. I'm starting to see that most districts have a 1-800 number for tutoring and technology support. There are also the chats now that most districts are offering, where you can get online and just press the chat button and then ask, hey, how do I help my child submit an assignment in Blackboard or in Canvas or in Blend? There's so many different platforms out there. So I can understand that would, as a parent, it could almost make you feel some type of way, but there are resources out there to connect to get help with that, because I know that is.
I mean, it's definitely can be challenging because, to your point, like I was saying, that the digital age has really been fast forwarded in COVID-19, and for some fathers, they grew up, writing a paper or doing work on paper. Now you have to do everything on a computer, submit it, through Google Drive, through email, through all these different things that some fathers might be very familiar with, and some fathers might not be familiar with at all. Do you think that this form of education, online learning, or homeschooling will become the new normal?
Yes, I do. And I just want to back up just 1 second to where you're talking about the challenges with that example of a father helping a teenage child submit an assignment. There's also the challenge too of just the way kids are learning things now. Like, I don't know if you've seen Eureka Math, but if you didn't learn how to divide or multiply using Eureka Math, it is challenging. And so while that might not necessarily be like an equity issue per se, it definitely is a challenging issue, because now the methods that kids are using, and so you mess around and show your child long division and they have never seen that before, they're looking at you like, well, that's not how my teacher taught me. So that's also some of the challenges that parents are facing too, right now. So again, I would just say definitely reach out to the teacher, YouTube it. Like, if there are concepts that you hear your kids saying and you're not really sure how to help them with that, YouTube it, stay in contact with the teacher, try to learn it too, so that you're able to support your child. And I know that's difficult, but we are being fast-tracked into the future in so many ways. And, I was listening to T.D. Jakes about a week ago, and he was talking about reinventing yourself, like the old way of how we do things we might not be going back to the old way. And I know a lot of people really want to go back to normalcy or the old way of doing things, but you know what? When your back is pushed up against the wall, that's when you become creative, inventive, and that's when you're forced to grow. And I think we're seeing some of that right now, in this time of COVID, and people are learning new things, doing new things because forced to. And so when it comes to technology as a parent, I would just encourage you really and truly to start learning, different platforms, different websites, different apps, so that you can also be aware of what's going on too right now in these times. So.
All right. Well, I mean, you've definitely covered a lot. If there's a father or a mother out there, what is one or two things as we're wrapping up this episode that you would like to leave with them as encouragement in this season of online schooling or homeschooling?
One is that you're doing a great job. Like I was saying earlier, there's no handbook for this, so I just encourage you to take it one day at a time, one step at a time. You are not alone in what you're doing. Stay connected with other parents out there. And then two, take this time to really connect with your child. It will pay off dividends. I know one thing for us, we both have been really taking this time to take homeschool seriously, but also to treat it as like a Bible study and I say that because we've been having more time to sit down and talk about the Word of God with our kids, teach about prayer with our kids, teach about just having a relationship with God and bonding more as a family, and those things will stretch so far. And so I just want to encourage you to do that as well too. So.
All right. Well, I'm gonna leave it there because if I don't put a period,
we'll keep going.
We'll keep going, and there's only 24 hours in a day. So this has been another episode of Fatherhood Friday, Season 4 with your host with the most, Charmer and
Tanya.
And this has been an episode about how fathers can be more involved in their child's online schooling.
Can I rap on the way out?
Sure.
All right. Chilling in the wind, back again. This is time.
Okay, we are going to end it there because we're going to end it there. So stay tuned next week, and if you're listening at this at the very end, in the words of Drake, it's too late. Take care. Hey, you out there. Voting isn't just going to the polls on election day anymore. Options like early voting, mail-in voting, and ballot drop boxes are available to more voters and are growing in popularity. How to Vote, a tool created by Democracy Works, breaks down the options your state offers for casting a ballot, empowering you to decide when and where to vote. For more information, go to howto.vote. Thanks. And here's a sneak peek into next week's Fatherhood Friday episode.
One, being in college. Time management was not my best friend in college. Again, I wish it was, but time management was not my best friend in college. I struggled with that again because I didn't really have a clear purpose to where I could prioritize my time.